gas masks and hand grenades. Gas masks and hand grenades. Gas masks and hand grenades. Gas masks and hand grenades.
Hey, what is happening, YouTube? It's Gas Masks and Hand Grenades here with you. I am Jeff, your host, and today I've got not one, but I've got two dudes from halfway around the world, or probably further than that, actually. I'm not very good at my geography, but they're way, way, way far away, like 12 or 14 hours ahead of us in the future. So today I've got the guys from Alter joining me. I've got Lewis Fischer and Brendan Sloan. Saw these guys open up for Ulcerate back in November down in Philly, and was really impressed with their kind of mixture of influences, and yet they still pull off their own sort of vibe. And I was immediately hooked when the bass player and singer, who's actually a guitarist, we'll talk about that a little bit, started playing the bass line, the really cool bass line, I believe from The Unknown Knows. I'm like, yes, I'm going to love this fucking band. So we're going to pull these guys in here now. This is Lewis Fischer and Brendan Sloan. How are you guys doing, man?
Good night, mate. How you going?
Good to see you. I was right, Brendan? You played The Unknown Known, that da-do-do-do, right? Or am I wrong?
Yeah, I don't think... Yeah. This is going to expose me as a guy who can't remember song titles. It's definitely Voivod. I can't remember if it's from Nothing Face or...
It is. It's definitely from Nothing Face, but I'm
yeah, because I'm not... That's not really... I don't really like Nothing Face. It's controversial for a Voivod fan. I like Dimension.
All right, hey, it was good seeing you, Brendan. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, exactly. See you, man. No, I'm an Angel Rat.
I love Angel Rat.
Dimension Hatros guy. I kind of skip. No, I like it. I just don't like it as much. But
yeah,
anyway,
I got you. That was kind of their controversial move from the more metal into the more progressive, and then Angel Rat and Outer Limits kind of took it to, I guess, their nth degree, and they're all good.
I mean, there's reasons for it, but yeah, we won't bore Lewis with me complaining about Voivod.
Well, listen, guys, I want to thank you so much for joining me, especially in the middle of the day like this. And we did this kind of, actually, I spoke to Lewis after the show, and I spoke to you, Brendan, really briefly. And I was like, man, I was really impressed with you guys, and talked about getting you on here. It took a little bit of time, but that's just how it is. And so I appreciate you joining me, Lewis. I appreciate your withstanding my barrage of DMs today, trying to get shit straight. Trying to get things sorted out. So tell me a little bit about Lewis. I believe you are the OG member of Alters, right? And tell me a little bit about the history of the band for those people that don't know. You've been around for better part of a decade now, I guess, right? Or even longer, actually.
I've basically been doing this since I was 17.
Which was like 3 years ago or something, right?
I'm 36 now, so
I know.
It took a little while to come up with a demo and kind of like go from there. But basically, it sort of met the former bassist and vocalist Kale, and the two of us sort of wanted to do a death metal band together, and it basically kind of sprouted from there. So the white guitar behind you can't really see it. You can see the headstock, but basically I got that guitar when I reckon I was 17 or just about to turn 18 or something like that. An original Ibanez Universe 7-string in powdered white, and basically every single Alters song that's ever been written has basically been written on that.
And that's a 7 or a 6? 7, right?
7.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So it's like the Where the Slime Live guitar that Eric Rattan plays in that video clip, and the black ones next to it, so that Trey kind of had. So I've kind of been playing those guitars for a long time, and basically since the beginning through to now. And yeah, I suppose it probably wasn't until the debut album came out in 2013 that things really sort of exploded. So that was Paramnesia, which is that one there. That one came out on Big Glary, but Nuclear went to records with the CD. Oh, hang on, I'll bring it back. Yeah,
yeah, I was going to say, hang on for 1 second.
Records to
Take it out of the jacket.
Oh yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah, maybe pull out the plastic might be a little bit better because I don't own this one yet. So there we go.
It's the old. This is my this is where I joined alters mentally, where I discovered them at this point.
Well, let me ask you this real quick before we go any further. Are you two guys in the same? You're in the same locale, I'm assuming, right?
Closer now than we were even a couple of weeks ago, because Lewis just moved into the place that he's doing this from.
Right. And where are you again?
I'm about 10 minutes from the airport in Melbourne in Victoria.
Melbourne, okay.
And Lewis is about 15 minutes away from me now.
Okay.
So we're more or less in the same place. And Dan is in Canberra, which is about 6 hours drive, 6.5 hours drive towards Sydney from up sort of northeast.
Yeah, I don't think people that unless you've visited Australia or you live there, I don't think people realize just how fucking big it is. It's a huge landmass, and a lot of it's not inhabited. Right? Yeah,
it's various amounts of habited. There's big gaps between people. Even the center part where it's mostly arid desert still has people in it. It's just much less of them there. Because the green bit is the ring around the coastlines, basically.
Right. Is east to west? What's that, about a 14-hour drive? Am I right or am I wrong?
East to west, like from Perth or from Fremantle or something, to Sydney, that's 3.5 days.
Oh, 3.5 days.
Yeah. Because you can't go across the middle because it's a fucking desert. You've got to go.
There's nothing there. You got to go around. Okay.
So it's 3, maybe 4 days or something. I moved from Sydney to Adelaide in 2018, and that took 17 or 18 hours total of driving. So we did it over 2 days.
Yeah, I mean, because if you go from New York to LA, it's about a 3-hour drive, 3,600 miles, I believe, or 3,400 miles, somewhere in that range. You could do it in 2 probably if you were on speed or something like that. But that's I've driven from where I live in Pennsylvania near Philly all the way out to Chicago in 1 day. So it's doable. But I didn't realize that there's nothing in the middle, that there's no roads there for the most part.
Not really, no. There are, but it's you can't drive
outback bush roads.
Yeah. There's often no fuel for, what's miles to kilometers again? It's having no fuel for 500 miles or something.
Oh shit!
In the middle, it's quite So if you're a long haul trucker or something like that, people do go straight through the middle. At 400 miles an hour, but most people you can't do it. Yeah, and on speed and crazy shit.
Yeah, on speed,
you wouldn't do it.
But no, anyone in Australia in a band touring to Perth is going to fly there. There's no way. There's no question.
Okay. So Lewis, getting back to the origin story. So you met the bass player, you were saying, and you guys got this thing going. And he was a local guy, I'm assuming, right? He's on the first album.
Yeah. So I guess we were all living in Adelaide at the time. Cal's originally from a town called Mildura, but was basically living in Adelaide, and that's where we met each other. And eventually met the drummer basically just by putting up signs in music stores with little bit of paper you can rip off and looking for a drummer, that sort of thing.
Sure.
So we kind of formed that way. There were some other people involved at various points that sort of came and gone. But by the time the first album came around, the band had basically kind of become this 3-piece, which is, the formation the band has today. And it's almost like the band before that, up until that point, wasn't necessarily sort of really the same band. It wasn't really until it formed that 3-piece power trio type thing that I think it really found itself in a way. Paramnesia really established that in kind of the sound we developed and whatnot.
Well, I haven't listened to that one yet. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't listen to it, and I should have. So I should have done my homework. I failed, but
well, you've got a nice little surprise later.
is it similar to acetic, or is it different? And what kind of influences you mentioned Morbid Angels, so clearly that's one. What other influences are happening here that you're bringing to the fore to create that out?
Firstly, like the two records were written in very different ways. So I guess the second record was written primarily during the lockdowns we had over here during the pandemic. So it was me recording things into my computer, improvising sort of to myself and coming up with and developing the ideas sort of myself in complete isolation, which were then later brought into a room and worked through with everyone to bring in their other parts and the bass parts and the drum parts and all of that, and the vocals, obviously. The first record, it was kind of developed in the room as it was happening. So I was coming up with riffs and we'd immediately be able to like come up with drums immediately to it and so on and so forth and develop the ideas that way. So they're both sort of come out of improvisations, but in very different settings and context. So the first record is maybe a little wilder in that regard. And I guess also like maybe more long-winded as a result because of, some of the songs are quite generally a bit longer, probably due to the fact the way it was written. Whereas with the second record, I was basically stuck by myself in a room with no one to talk to. So I had a lot of time to really refine things kind of several layers further. And kind of like there were, concepts and ideas on the first record that I kind of wanted to revisit on the second record and take them further. But, I kind of had all the time in the world to be able to do that. And before I could even share it with anyone. So
Melbourne had like the longest sustained pandemic shutdown of any.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, they were pretty strict down there. I remember hearing about that.
Yeah, and so when he says that he was in a room with no one to talk to, is quite literally that, where it didn't have that much to do. And at this point,
like lots of fun.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, so in the chronology, Lewis was in a band called Ignivimus in between the first record and this one. So after that band sort of went on a hiatus, he went back and started to write for Alters again, found the energy to write for Alters again. And then the pandemic happened, like at almost exactly the same moment, sort of 2019, 2020 sort of crux. So from the beginning of writing it, even though some of the ideas are as old as Paramnesia or, from that sort of time period, filtering through, it very much just, the songs were kind of fully formed by the time Alan, who the original drummer, who played on Acetic Reflection, before he'd even seen them and before I'd seen them later on. So they were basically like full songs, kind of more or less pre-composed. They didn't have like a fully fleshed out bass line. They didn't have lyrics for anything except for like 1.5 songs. The track in the middle of the record, the lyrics come from a painting by Aldo Tambellini, so that was already done. That's literally like the lyrics are verbatim the content of the painting. And so it was kind of like 70% written completely in isolation, and then the remaining 30% of developing it and producing Acetic Reflection was done as a band. And Paramnesia, on the other hand, it feels like 3 dudes in a room going like making a definite record for most of it. And then toward the end of the record, you start to hear where it's going. The last like 3 tracks on it are a suite, and they sort of are a bit more composed and a bit more like deliberate in the way that they flow.
Well, the interesting fact to note,
put the threads together about how it would develop.
One thing we should note, though, there was a 9 year delay, like gap, right? Was that what it was? About 9 years, right?
Yeah. So the band basically ceased to exist.
Okay.
Former vocalist slash bassist. He basically, due to various health reasons, couldn't do it anymore. And I basically made the decision then and there that we had to kind of call it quits. It wasn't feasible for us to be able to perform live, and I always wanted it to be a live performance band, and the live performance and presentation of the music's very important to me. So the way it's presented live, and when you see it, when you saw us in Philly, you know, like the way things were performed as a certain kind of moving structure, if you will, like it's kind of like pretty critical to the presentation, because Alters is a weird band. It's very much about, you know, you're not coming here for the obituary riffs. There aren't any. It's more you just kind of need to feel and be absorbed and consumed by the music, whether in a live setting or on a record. So it's,
not only that, Cale is a really idiosyncratic sort of musician. And so when you're faced with the prospect of replacing someone or substituting for someone like Cale, it's quite daunting, because you can't just drop in death metal vocalist. Like, even I'm not a particularly good replacement for Cale. I can't do I don't sound like him. So I do my own interpretation of those songs as a fan of that material. But yeah, Cale is he is a force unto himself. He played the bass in a very idiosyncratic and sometimes like destructive way, almost disregarding the fact that he was supposed to be playing bass. He'd just be punching it, or like, you know, not even playing notes. Like, some of the material on Paramnesia doesn't really have a bass part to speak of. There's large chunks of some of the songs where he just stops playing completely and just like makes a noise on the bass. So there's lots of stuff about that made Alters a weird band. And so it makes perfect sense that if there's struggles, that
kind of goes back to my
too much
question.
hassle to like
right. That kind of references back to my question to Lewis about what were your original sort of influences. And I get it. You want to do, every artist wants to say, yeah, my thing's totally original, and we all do that, right? But we all have defined reference points of what so like, as I described in the description, you guys are kind of like the abortion of Gorguts meets Voivod meets Incantation meets a little bit of Immolation. You know, it's all this twisted miasma. I did throw Portal in there because I could hear a little bit of that. That's very much an
It's
Aussie.
Impossible to be from Australia and not be influenced by Portal in some way.
Yeah, it's an Aussie
play death metal in 2024 and not
right.
So yeah, you're on the money. Yeah.
Really, like for me, like since the very beginning, it's kind of more or less been a combination of Luke LeMay from Gorguts and Trez from Morbid Angel. And if you smash those two guys together, that's kind of me somewhere in the middle of that in a jumbled mess of shit. I've kind of like always really respected those two guys for the just complete inventiveness on their instruments, and the way they sort of, I guess, created their own language through what they were doing. And they're always innovating, even today. Like, even Trey still is doing weird shit. And when he's sober, there was something about like he was putting his finger like underneath the string. Like, what is that?
There's video of him playing some of the stuff on the last tour where he was fretting the string from beneath. Like, somehow managed to get his index finger underneath the low strings. To maniac.
Yeah, I hope we all know he's had his struggles, so I hope he's getting right with that, because it's a struggle to watch. I've seen him a couple of times, and when he's sober, he's so unique and so very different. And when he's not, he's
Trey rules. He's so funny.
Very
what a lot of people. I was talking to Dave Vadim Von. We played a couple shows with Incantation a while back, just before we went on tour, actually, and he was saying, what a lot of people don't actually know is, like, you know, Trey walked back on stage the next night after that incident and like played the best show of the tour. So like the dude's, you know, invincible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
let's hope.
yeah, I bet you know that's not the
Fueled
thing
by
that gets
acid and
publicized.
lava only.
So-
Acid and lava in the veins.
So Trey was a huge influence, and we actually, I led off by talking to you down in Philly, saying, "Hey, Luke's a friend of mine," and actually Kevin Huffnagel is my guitar teacher. So,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really? There you go.
yeah. In fact,
We
I'm
caught
sorry?
Kevin briefly at Vitus in New York, and
Oh, did you?
Like,
Great guy, great guy.
Frustrating before, because I'm a huge Dysrhythmia fan, and I've been a Dysrhythmia fan for a long time. So I was extremely excited when he joined Gorguts, and I remain excited about all the shit he's doing. Like even the ukulele records, where he's an incredible musician.
He is, and a sweetheart of a guy. And the good news is they're writing riffs, they're sharing stuff back. There's new Gorguts coming, so that's a definite.
I don't doubt it. Yeah.
Go ahead, Liz. I'm just getting a slight overlap. So just if I talk, I'm not trying to talk over you guys. I'm just getting a slight overlap. So
no, you're good.
So after Pandesium, everything kind of folds. Did you guys do a lot of touring and shows off that album during, before, and after, or was it kind of pretty quickly after that he left?
We did like some tours within Australia. At that time, that was basically all the band could have physically done in that format due to reasons. I'd always wanted to take it overseas and present the material internationally. We should have done it at the time, but weren't physically able to for various reasons. So when I started writing music again, and for Alters specifically, it was specifically, okay, it's sort of like, I have some things left to say. This is the material, and the intention is to present this far and wide as much as we can. So this time around, you know, we've done Europe, we've done the US, Canada, Mexico, multiple tours within Australia. We just did one with Mortiferum from the States. We did one with them and Faceless Barrel, who are local to us as well. It's a lot of fun. So, you know, we've really gone and done that this time around. And I think also had the capacity to. There was a lot of interest. You know, people at these shows have, you know, come up to us with copies of the first album, wanting to get it signed, all sorts of stuff like that. That first album's a weird one in that it really grew to like kind of become this monolithic thing in the years kind of silence between. So it sort of became a bit of a cult record in a way, and it's kind of really hard to actually get a copy of, particularly on vinyl. The CD, I think, well, we've sold out, but I believe there's still copies around of a repress that came out in 2022. So
But no,
like a lot of people have a real soft spot for it.
Brendan, how do you become involved then?
There weren't very many shows, but during that period, like, so I mentioned, if anyone's talked to me about this before, I've freely volunteered this information that Alters was my favorite band, more or less.
Oh, cool.
This is another sort of Voivod connection. Well, my favorite like death metal band anyway, because of the way Paramnesia sounds. Like you'll get it when you listen to it. And in 2015, I was in another band. I was in a post-metal band called Dumb Saint, making like kind of Russian circles-y, Mogwai.
Yep.
And I took my drummer from that band because he's into slam and like we're Defeated Sanity fans and like it was a weird band. I took him and the bass player from another band called Sleep Makes Waves, who are on the same label, to go and watch Alters, because I think the show was like Alters, Ulcerate, and one other band that I keep forgetting. It was like Dead River. Denouncement Pyre? Yeah, okay.
Was it the Melbourne one or the Sydney one?
No, it was the Sydney one. It was the one at the start.
Oh, it was Dead River.
The Jumper. It was what? Dead River? Yeah, it was Dead River.
Dead River.
So that would have been funny. I don't know if Dan had anything to do with Dead River at the time, but that would be
very funny. He was drumming.
And that means all three members of the current version of Alters were at this show. So I took those guys to watch Alters in 2015 or 16 or something like that. And then we decided at that point, we should do a band. We should do a metal band. We're playing this fucking post-rock shit. We should be doing metal and like just for shits. Because obviously there's 3 people here on stage. We've got a drummer, bassist, guitar player here, standing here watching it. Let's do it. So I went away and wrote some material, and we had like one jam, and then it didn't really go anywhere because of just we had no time to put into it, or like I was living like an hour away from the rest of them, and the commitments of the other 2 bands were kind of getting in the way.
Sure. Yeah.
So long story short, I finished up all of that material myself and released my own record, like a solo record, as Convulsing in when was that? 2016? November 2016.
Yeah, I think it was 16, wasn't it?
2016. It was like 7 years ago.
Terrifying record, by the way. Just
so that's that. And then fast forward years and years later of doing Convulsing shit. Lewis, parallel to this, is doing Ignivimus and then puts Alters back together and makes a little Facebook post about like a teaser of the instruments laying down when they're rehearsing, because they had another bass player who was they had someone else who was going to do the vocals and bass before I became involved, and they were working on it. And so I was like, this is after years of punishment. Like I moved to Adelaide, and Lewis was there visiting his family and bumped into me in the street.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, if I could interrupt. You guys knew each other from the scene, or didn't? Okay, so you didn't really, but you didn't really like know each other well.
No, not really. No, kind of. Like we met.
Australia is small. It's small,
but we're also very far away from each other. So you can meet people at a show and then never see them again, basically.
Yeah, right.
For like another 5 years or something.
Of course.
So I went to this show and I bought a shirt, and I met Kale and Lewis at the desk, and bought like a jumper that I've still got, like a hoodie, one of these ancient hoodies. And then years later, I'm working in Adelaide. This is after I've moved. This is like 2018 or something like that. And I'm walking between buildings at work, and Lewis bumps into me in the street. And he was like, "Oh, hey, man, it's me. I'm Lewis." And blah, blah, blah. We've been talking on the internet. Like, "Oh, yeah, fucking right." Blah, blah, blah. And so from that point, I started punishing them about like, "Oh, okay, I live, you know." And I met Alan, the drummer, the previous drummer, original drummer, at a show we played together while I was in another band. So there was this soft pressure from me to the ones that I knew, like going, "Oh, so when's Alters coming back? When's Alters coming back?" And then this Facebook post happens where Alters is coming back, and I'm like, "Oh shit, okay, cool." And so we'd originally teed up that Convulsing and Alters would do like an East Coast tour, 2020, and we are going to get other bands like Plowshare and the other East Coast and friends of ours like Grievous and Queensland and a few other bands. We're just going to do a little East Coast run and put a whole thing together. Then the pandemic lockdowns happened, and Lewis got trapped. He'd gone to visit his family again because his sister was going to have a kid, and then got stuck because they closed the borders between South Australia and Victoria. So he got stuck in South Australia with me and the original drummer. Well, at that point, he was like, "Okay, fuck this. Do you just want to do it? Do you just want to just help me finish this fucking record, because I'm sick of working on it and we just need to get it out of my life." So that's what we
by that point, it had been about 2 years. And I just hadn't been able to do anything.
So basically, Lewis, you were stuck with him. And you're like, whatever, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Not at all. Like, if anyone was going to do it, like Brendan was going to do by far and away the best job. So, like, it was like a perfect sort of match. I was also sort of debating whether Brendan should do guitar. You know, he's a very accomplished guitarist.
Right. And bring a bass player
whether we would change the format a bit. In the end, it kind of made more sense for him to do bass and vocals and to kind of maintain that 3-piece format at least for now, because it just kind of makes sense, especially with the older material. There's a lot of stuff that's happening that's just kind of weird and wouldn't suit a 2-guitar format. But then there were things, you know, that kind of expanded on the new record that might lend itself better to a 2-guitar format. So I guess we'll just see, you know,
caught between worlds.
Things
carry on. It felt you know, I'm a guitarist, obviously, and I was impressed with the overall atmosphere. It felt like there was more going on than maybe there really was. Probably remember I was asking about gear. I was like, well, what amps are you using and what effects are you using? Because Ulcerate comes out, and what's his name? Mike, is it the guitar player?
Mike,
yeah. He just has this fucking. It's just this thing. It just comes at you from everywhere, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they have a thing, and clearly, you know, how long have they been around? Ulcerate, has it been like 20 years for them?
Long time.
Yeah.
The demo compilation I think is 2004 or 5. Like
yeah, so about 20.
The record before their first studio record, which was of Fracture and Failure, which is when they were a 2-guitar band and they had a separate vocalist, so they were a 5-piece.
Okay, but they figured out a way to do the 3-piece thing, and you know, there's a lot of killer 3-piece bands out there. Rush is my favorite band in the entire universe, and they do it really well, right? So, so I was impressed with that, and I think that, you know, it is an interesting. The music is so dense and so kind of, how do I want to put this? Chaotically strange and twisting. It twists a lot. It's got a lot of twists and turns. It's got some of that Trey Azagthoth weirdness in there going on. That, you know, one minute you're chugging, the next minute you're doing tremolo picking, the next minute you're layering some sort of ambient sort of, you know, thing that kind of hangs in the air. And then you've got Brendan's had a very prominent bass tone. I don't know what you were using, Brendan. What were you using on this tour? I can't remember.
So
as far as amp.
This links in nicely. So this is the BTB 6-string. So this is the bass. Well, this is a version of the BTB 46 QM. Colin plays one of these in Gorguts, actually.
Right.
So, but that's just coincidental. This bass belongs to the bass player for Convulsing, my buddy Peter. And he sold it to me so that I could play it in alters.
Okay, yeah.
And he was one of the options for 4-piece alters, where if I was playing guitar, we should have got Peter to play the bass, and it would have been this whole like incestuous thing.
Is that the one you use? That's the one you use, though, right?
Yeah, it was basically this, and I have a little preamp pedal made by a dude called DeCosimo. That's like a Gallien-Kruger GK 800RB preamp in a pedal. Okay. And then that's going into a dark glass, which is doing nothing. So I'm trying to get that sort of bi-amped, kind of clonky bass sound that like Nick McMaster gets in Krallis and like Colin gets in Gorguts. Like I want that sort of clean bottom shelf and then like a really aggressive mid-range voice. And it's a little bit different to the way it used to be in alters because of that. Like I'm trying to make up in some ways for the fact that we don't have 2 guitar players. Right,
exactly. And I noticed that it was very noticeable. Yeah. I also heard a little bit of kind of that blower bass from Blackie, that kind of really overdriven sort of punchy, you know, where you really feel the bass coming out as opposed to being a part of the rhythm section. It's almost kind of a lead instrument in the band in a lot of ways, right?
That riff is from Experiment, by the way. It is from Hatros. It's the first track. It's not from Nothing Face.
Oh, it is from Hatros. You're right. Yep.
Anyway, yes, that's exactly what it's like. So, but I'm doing that on purpose to try and
fill space,
play like a bit of rhythm guitar on the bass, so that we can play more of the weirder guitar layers properly, like in full. And that's sort of by necessity. When you have like layered guitar parts, but only one guitar player to play them, you have to chop and change between what you're doing, whether you're playing this sort of like minor second thing high up the fingerboard or whether you're chugging. You have to like in ways you wouldn't normally do in a regular band, where you could just say, you do that, I'll do this. Right. You have to choose your moment to switch, and you can end up in kind of strange places when you do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, you definitely hear you were doing some more chordal work behind when Lewis would go into sort of some weird twisting, spiraling sort of solo thing. You were kind of playing more of a role of, like you said, like a rhythm guitarist. So that was what was kind of unique, because you don't see that a lot unless you're really talking about it, you know, unless you're using like like in Rush, Geddy's using Taurus pedals to
Yeah, exactly.
bring a lot of shit in, right? And I
Keyboard.
didn't. Yeah. What were you using on that? You told me, Lewis. What were you using? You're using Ibanez, right?
Yeah.
The gems. This guy right here, Explosive
the
Action.
main one.
Oh, that one. Okay,
the
yeah.
one I was using on tour.
That's the
was
one you were
this
playing,
guy.
yeah.
So, it's kind of a customized Ibanez 7620.
Okay.
This is a little cheaper and less. I don't worry about taking this one out of the house.
Of course. Yeah.
This one's like an original 90s one with the square neck joint. So
yeah, you don't want to get that ripped off.
I got this specifically to take on tour, and another backup as well for this, and it's actually a great guitar. It's got like a custom Carina body with
the back,
really
nice,
dense. But now I've basically just started playing this one for everything, and this one's sort of being retired a little bit just because they're too rare now. But this is I do everything on this basically. It's my this is where the magical guitar, where the magic happens. So.
And I see you got orange behind you. What head is that?
So
you got two of them.
Yeah, I use both. One's an OR50 and one's a Rockerverb 50 Mark III. Live here, whenever I'm playing here, I use those. On tour, I was just using some PVs. That's like pretty stock backline stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So like the 6505 is what you tend to get lumped with. But
is that the one that you used the 6505 on tour, right? Is that what it was? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We basically went along with.
So normally my setup is like the OR50 is the dry amp and the Rockerverb is a wet amp.
Right.
So I kind of
blend.
Ideally, you run it in a 4-cabinet setup where basically a cab on each side, one's just a dry signal and one's a wet signal.
Right.
And then that way, no matter where you are in the audience, you get the combination of both together. And sometimes I'll turn one amp off and then bring it back on to kind of simulate that, double tracks sound on a record where, a guitar drops out and then comes back in. So yeah, it's you're kind of doing lots of things to kind of make it work. Mike from Ulcerate and I, we actually run like a pretty similar setup in that regard. So do
Mortiferum guys as well.
When Mortiferum, we're doing the same thing with the 2-guitar setup. The Blood Incantation guys do the same thing with a 2-guitar setup, so that like no matter where you are in the audience, you're getting the harmony, like the full thing.
Yeah,
I'm doing it as a 1-guitar setup. So
Dead Congregation, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's funny because they did a tour out here with Blood Incantation, and we jumped on a couple of the shows, and just so for the interest of keeping the backline changes simpler,
right?
We bullied Anastasis into like doing the crossover thing, and they were just like, "Oh, I don't know, maybe it'll sound weird," and they did it once, and they're like, "This is the best thing we've ever done." We can hear like we got the 2 guitars coming on both sides, we got the harmonies, everything's sick, having the time of their lives. So it's
that was the thing about
if you can get it right. It's good.
That was the thing about both you guys, both your band and Ulcerate in particular. The sound just comes at you from everywhere, man. It's like almost like you're in sort of a surround sort of thing. It's very bizarre to explain unless. Now, granted, that was a pretty relatively small room. I don't know. Maybe there was 150 people there. I'm terrible at guessing that kind of shit, so I don't know.
That's probably about right.
Yeah, it was probably about that, and yet. You both had this sort of massive sort of sound coming at me. Yeah. That was what impressed me. And seeing a million bands at my age, I've been out there a long time, and it's like I don't just walk up to anybody and go, "Hey, man, come on my show." I got to be impressed. So it was cool.
Well, I'm glad we managed to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you did that tour. I think you did. Philly was either the next to last day or the last day, was it? Or
it was Philly. Then we had Thanksgiving with the dudes from Interama and a few other people, and then we went and did Baltimore, and then New York, and we finished up.
Yeah.
So we were in Baltimore with Genevieve, who I'm representing today, on the like 2 days after that, and then we went home like 4 days after we saw you, basically.
How many dates did you do on that tour? It was quite a few, right? About 30?
I always get this wrong. It was like 18 or 19
think-
or something.
Okay.
I think North America was 15 or 16.
There you go.
And
See?
before
Canada.
that, Europe was 24.
Yeah, Europe
I
was
think.
the longer one.
So
So
Europe was a little longer.
how was your general? This is your first time at the States as far as bit touring, right?
Yeah.
Have you
First
been?
time
Have
for
you,
me at all. Yeah,
well, I was going to say, have either of you guys been here before? You've never been here before?
Lewis has.
Oh, okay.
I'd been just like on holiday to New York and also Hawaii, but
Wow.
yeah, first time touring. It's very hard for bands from Australia,
Yeah,
New Zealand, and
very
basically anywhere that's not the US to come to the US.
Yeah.
There's visas, systems,
Very
bureaucratic.
expensive.
It's very expensive. Like
Yeah.
extremely expensive. You would die.
No, I do know. I talked to enough bands from out of the country to know it's a crazy process too. And you got to really start it like literally 9 to 12 months in advance to
Yeah,
when you're going to
yeah.
try to get over.
The expense
You-
aside,
you've
it's
also
just
got
a huge
to-
pain. Yeah.
I had to
When
put
you-
this like really intense application together and basically employ lawyers to work with us to basically help get it over the line. And yeah, this is why not a lot of bands from down here will come there, and it's
Yeah.
very hard. It's very hard.
Yeah.
So
It used to be
and
sort
you
of
also need
trivial
to
to just
prove
like,
that you're like kind of big enough, so they can
Yeah.
just deny you at any time. They basically want you to prove that you're like Beyonce and you're going to be selling out Madison Square Garden or something. So
Yeah.
it's really weird. It's a very strange process compared to like what we're used to. Like if you want to come to Australia, the visa process is like really easy and very inexpensive, and sort of like we're
Well,
happy to
let
have
me
you.
ask you a question then. Did you? Well, first of all, what was your overall impression of kind of traveling through these different cities? And you did pretty much the big cities like San Fran and LA and Philly and New York and Baltimore. I mean, I don't know if you did a lot. Chicago, I think you did. Did you do any
Chicago.
central U.S. stuff? You didn't go to like St. Louis or Colorado or anything, did you?
No.
not too much.
Basically, we started on the West Coast and went from basically LA all the way up to Vancouver.
Mhm.
We then flew out to Mexico, played Mexico City, which was probably the most insane show we've ever played.
Fucking crazy.
Yeah, those people are nuts. They love their metal.
Beautiful and really
amazing
like
audience.
really
Like-
giving and just lovely people, but just fucking crazy shit.
Was that the most probably the biggest attended show, or don't you know?
I have no idea. Like we had sold out shows, I think, in LA and New York, and like probably a couple others. So like
Okay.
those might have been bigger venues, but
Right. Where'd you play in?
LA would
where'd
have been the biggest venue, maybe.
Where did you play in New York?
Vitus.
Vitus,
Vitus.
okay.
So Vitus is quite small comparatively.
600, I think. 600.
Yeah.
Yeah.
LA. Do you remember where you played there?
Knitting Factory.
Knitting Factory. Yeah.
That's bigger.
Not,
That's
not
like,
Hollywood Knitting Factory.
no, that's probably like 1,200, I think. So what was your overall impressions? And just so you guys, because when you guys talk, you kind of overlap. So I'll just maybe go with one. Brendan, what was your
Sure.
overall impression of the U.S.
It was very,
and
very
how
excitable.
how much did you enjoy? Like how well do you think the tour was received, and you guys in particular?
I mean, it's hard to say anything other than it was really good. Like we had a great time, and it was especially fun that being from Australia and being from like so far away from where metal lives in both Europe and in the US.
Right.
We're very connected, like through the internet and through even going back to like tape trading and just buying merch from bands, and you build up these sort of relationships with people over many years.
Sure.
So it was just like going to visit all of your friends for a lot of these shows, especially for me. Like Steve from Piron and Serputus was at the Philly show, and we've known each other for like a decade. And that was the first time that I met him. And I was just like stoked. So it was something like that at every show for all of us, and for like
kind of like getting together with the family. You know,
kind of, exactly.
The metal
and like Rennie Starkweather. Rennie was at the Philly show as well, and we've been familiar even longer than that. And he's just the sweetest guy. And it started out like that from day one, from the LA show. Like the first show we played was with Teeth. So we got to hang out with Errol and Justin and like all those dudes, and we're just like, what are we doing here? This is like, we don't, these people are imaginary. They're from another land.
Yeah, pinch me, right?
So that was what it was like for us a lot. It was a real, so in a way, we weren't really even paying attention to whether the shows like were sold out or like full of people, because we were just like, there's that one person or a couple of people. Like we played in Montreal, and the room was full of Quebecois metal guys that we've been listening to since we were in high school. And we were like, what the fuck? Like the dudes from Patrick Loisel from Augury was in the audience of that show.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what the fuck, Pat? So I went to try and find him after, but he had to go home because he was just like teaching a class or something the next day. So just stuff like that all the time. Yeah. So it was amazing to it. Fantastic. How
about you, Lewis? What was your take on the whole experience?
Yeah, it was honestly just amazing. All of it was really, really enjoyable. It was a very different kind of touring kind of setup to like Europe, but it was really, really good. Even the smaller shows, like we played Detroit, we played Syracuse, which I wasn't sort of expecting anything incredible from.
Yeah,
they're not as big as like, you know, your Chicago shows and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a weird one. That's a weird one. Like the Buffalo.
Syracuse was cool as hell.
Yeah.
Syracuse ended up being really cool.
Oh wow, nice.
And it was a really fun show. So
in the literal and the anecdotal sense, like it was 0 degrees Celsius outside, like and like -4 Celsius or something while we were there for quite a lot of that day.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you guys not get cold like that? It doesn't get down that low down where you're at?
Not really, no.
Yeah.
In some parts of the country, you can go and there'll be snow in the mountains or something.
Right.
But like, when we were loading out from that show and then at the hotel later, there's this hilarious video of it was the first time in our adult lives for quite a few of us, for any of us, seeing snow.
Oh, so you're all like, wow.
Out. So there's like
snowball battle, yeah?
Basically, yeah. So like it makes you feel like a 5-year-old again, just be like,
well, I gotta ask
desert and sun all the time. It's like
I gotta ask this question. How, you guys are in your mid-30s, right? You said you were 34, right, Lewis? And I assume you're about the same, Brendan, in that range?
I'm 34 this year.
Okay. So you guys are still young men. And I say that simply because my kid's 28 and I'm going to be 58 in 2 months. So how, look, you're out there, you're kind of living large in a weird way, right? You're on this kind of like, I don't know, summer vacation, only it's winter sort of thing, right? Doing the metal thing. How much partying's going on, and are you guys keeping that in check?
Very little from me. Like, I'm an old man.
Yeah. Or a smart man, one or the other.
No, I've been old for a long time. I've been old since I was like in my early teens. I'm not the partying type.
Okay.
But I don't begrudge anyone the opportunity. Like when we went and had Thanksgiving dinner, that was probably the only time anyone was really interested in doing that, because we didn't have to play a show like in an hour.
Right.
So there was a bit of partying that went on there, and I basically just sat with my beer and had a quiet drink, and everyone else got turned up a little bit. So that very little. We're all pretty sensible guys, especially on that tour. Everyone's pretty sensible, because I mean, if you go out, like especially playing this kind of music that's fraught with danger. Yes. It's not necessarily like the most tech music in the world, but it's like when I was playing in a post-metal band a long time ago. If you make one tiny little mistake, the delay tail reminds you.
It throws everything off, right?
It's just like your mistake is repeating behind you. It's a similar idea with Ulcerate's music and with our music, is that
you got to focus.
If we fuck up one little detail of it, it can like derail the train just enough that the whole rest of the show is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So it disincentivizes you from partying too hard, because if you're fucked for the next day,
if you're
have a
hungover,
miserable time.
Mhm.
So, and it's the same for Ulcerate, like, and Jamie particularly, because he's like got to be perfect, like absolutely perfect to play.
They play to a click or no?
I don't really want to give away their secrets.
Okay, all right. How about you guys? You guys don't?
The short answer to that, without giving away too much, is not really.
Okay.
They kind of do, but they also kind of don't, and we don't.
Okay, all right, yeah. Because you weren't using in-ears, you were just using monitors, I believe, right?
Yeah,
stage monitors. Yeah.
The only time that there's a click present for us is we have a cue to tell the drummer when a sample is about to finish.
Right.
But we don't like play to it at any point. It's just so that he knows when something's about to happen, when he needs to start playing, and that's about it. And then after that, he just takes the headphones off, and we're back to being a regular band.
Speaking of your drummer, that's Alan?
Dan.
I'm sorry, Dan. Yeah, I was going to go to Dan. When did he come into the fold then? Because he replaced Alan, right?
Yeah. That was 20. Was it 22 or 23? No, 23. I'd actually pre-pandemic hitting, I'd actually jammed with Dan a couple times. Basically, I've known Dan a long time, and basically in the hope that we could revive the Ulcerate project. But then the pandemic hit, and that was kind of totally off the cards, and I got stuck in Adelaide anyway. And then Alan was available and wanted to do it, and but yeah, basically we kind of reached a point where it's like, okay, the album's released, we are kind of lining up some pretty serious tours, and there's various opportunities coming our way. And when you're from this part of the world, you kind of need to grab opportunities with both hands.
Exactly.
Alan wasn't really up for doing that. I was very clear kind of like with, what I wanted this to be and where I wanted to go. And from the very beginning, it's like not doing this to sit at home and just do like solo records. This is a live band and it needs to be. But yeah, sort of Alan, I guess, came to the realization that, for him, like he'd rather like he recently played a show in Europe with one of his other bands. And but yeah, he can do that, but sort of, lengthy multi-week tours really aren't for him. So we needed to find a replacement, and Dan was sort of keen to do it. It was really hard to find anyone at all, but I'd already sort of had those discussions.
Didn't you say you knew him from a band that played with you prior? You guys said you were all in the same room, or was that?
Yeah, we're actually all on the same bill at one show. Well, Brendan was in the audience.
I was in the audience.
Dead River or something? Was it called Dead River?
Dead River Runs Dry, which is sort of, I don't think they're active anymore at all.
No. Dan's a veteran.
I'd known Dan prior to that.
Yeah,
he's been in a lot of bands. I did note that on Metallica. He's got like 5 times the bands you guys do.
He's been in a lot of bands, and then also he used to do a zine a really long time ago, and I think that might have been how I first kind of interacted with him, I think. So I can't really remember anymore. It's like, we're talking multi-decade long relationships, mostly on the internet, but also, when we'll see each other at shows and stuff, if there's a big thing happening,
The one that probably most people know Dan from, if you know anything about him, is he played in a band called Infinitum a long time ago.
Yes.
And so they were kind of a speedy Black Death sort of band. But where I met him in the 2000s was he has a solo project called Bleakwood. That's this kind of really introspective, philosophical kind of black metal record. It's not really like a progressive black metal record, but it nearly is. Dan is a very widely listened, creative, thoughtful musician, like a really strong composer in his own right. So he was a perfect fit to to substitute for Alan's creativity. Because Alan is also a fucking extremely talented and creative musician. We're not taking anything away from him by saying he wasn't up for the touring, because it's not really possible for most people in Australia to get an experience of playing 30 shows in a row, because we have 5 cities.
Yeah. Man.
And not everybody has the life, like the setup of the foundation in their life to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And so for Alan, it was definitely, it and still is, I guess, a bit difficult to brace that possibility, in the same way that it was kind of difficult for Cale to do it on a smaller scale. And so that's kind of the Alter's curse, is that you find these like really creative people and you make this incredible music. And it's only just now that we've arrived at a point where all of us are able to like bring it out to people, and we have a foundation set where we can go and do it, 3 weeks in the US, and life won't fall apart behind us while we're doing it. We can do it. So it'd be interesting going forward to see where it goes.
I think a lot of people, particularly fans regarding bands such as yours, and even Ulcerate for that matter, you guys have lives that you have to pay bills. You have to pay your rent or your
I'm doing it right now while we're having this conversation.
I was going to say, you've been doing your bills during the whole entire interview.
No, I'm doing. I'm a professional Microsoft Excel.
So you're working.
I'm
actually working. Yeah. So I mean, basically, you guys have to work. You're not going out and making gazillions of dollars with alters. No. I mean, and I was going to ask you, and you don't have to say, but did you come home with some money in your pocket from the tour?
Yeah, in a manner of speaking.
Or
yes, but yes, but complicated. So,
but it all went back into
we did. Exactly. But it's kind of all going into the next one because we are coming back. So our visa was approved basically for a period of time, bringing us up to the end of Maryland Death Fest. So we're coming back to do the pre-fest show.
Mm-hmm.
So the visa covers that for that length of time. We're going to do some extra dates prior to that. So sort of can't say too much about it yet. It's not announced yet, but we'll be hitting up the sort of the northeast, south, midwest sort of area, and we're going to try and do some of the cities we didn't get to do on that Ulcerate tour. So there were a bunch of places we would have liked to have gone that we didn't get to go to. So we're going to do some of those and some other ones that we did do that we enjoyed playing.
Now I know you can't say anything about with who you're going to be with, because I'm assuming it's going to be a joint sort of thing where you've got another. You're not just going out solo, right? Are you on those dates, or are you?
No, there's going to be some other bands,
a couple bands. Yeah,
we're going to collide with a few other tours that are going to be bigger bills. So
people are coming over for Maryland Death Fest, I would assume. Yeah,
it seems like a pretty busy time of year for metal in the USA.
Yes, it really is. And I mean, you guys have never been to MDF. It's fucking crazy. It's super cool. It's fucking insane, man. And last year, well, it wasn't last year, it was 22, I didn't think they could ever top that. But I got to say, this year, man, it's right on par. It is right. It is like, I mean, 22's was fucking incredible. It was, Autopsy, Deicide, Blood Incantation. I mean, Atheist. Anyone you can think of in metal, I'm pretty sure most of those bands were there. And then this year, some of them chose not to come in. Like Dismember was an issue. I think there was some vax issues that one of the members didn't want to deal with. But now they're going to be there. Bloodbath. What's that?
I thought it was a visa thing for them.
Well, maybe it was a visa thing. Yeah. I don't know.
There were a couple of visa things where, and
Bloodbath,
high-profile one where they
Bloodbath had to drop because of visas, and I mean, but this year, man, it's fucking crazy good, man. I mean, and I'm hoping to be there, so I've got some medical issues I'm dealing with, but that's my plan, is to be there. And you guys actually on the opening show, my buddy, one of my best buddies, Kelly Schaefer's Atheist, is going to be on that, and then Sodom. Let's hope Sodom doesn't cancel, because they often do, but let's hope they don't. But that's going to be crazy, man.
I feel like I saw something about Sodom's visas being approved, and
I think they're good.
all go this time. So
they got approved really early this time.
But yeah, Atheist. So it's crazy. They're a band I never thought I would ever get to see live. Being from Australia, you know, it's kind of like a very far-fetched dream as a teenager, like go and watch them. But to get to see them, let alone play a show with them, it's just completely bonkers.
Well, if I'm there, man, I'll make sure you get to meet Kelly. I mean, well, you'll probably be able to anyways, but super fucking, just one of the greatest dudes you're ever going to meet, man. Such a good guy. Other guys, man, like Esoteric, you know, Esoteric?
Yeah.
Greg, another fucking amazing dude, man. There's just going to be so many killer bands down there. It's going to be
there's some really good ones, and even some of our friends are playing some of the other days. Like we just toured Europe with Fossilization. They're from Brazil. They are awesome. Their album that came out was it last year? It is really, really cool, and they're fantastic live. Great atmosphere. Definitely check them out if you're on one of those days. Also, Contaminated from Australia are going to be out. They've got a new album dropping in a couple of days, I think. So
yeah, I'm planning to be there all 4 days. It's going to be a struggle, man, because it really does kick your ass after a while. I mean, as much of a metalhead as I am, I'm also pushing 60. So, you know, my legs are the same, my knees, my back, all that shit like that. So we'll wrap up here in a couple minutes. But I wanted to show Ascetic Reflection. And, Brendan, I think you had it, right?
Yeah.
Pull that out and pimp that thing.
Freshly arrived with me the other day. We were hoping we would have these prior to now.
They're pretty, man.
But it just got its second pressing, courtesy of Giorgio and the crew at Everlasting Spew.
Now that's
there's a few copies on this variant, and then a few copies on just flat black.
Yeah. Now, if you're in the U.S. though, buying that from your Bandcamp is going to be not very cheap, right? I hate to break it to you, but that shipping is insane from Australia, right?
Luckily, you don't.
It is insane. There's a couple things you can do through our label. A lot of our stuff gets sent to, I think, Night Shift merch.
Night Shift, okay.
And I think there's one other one. But also, there's a record store in Chicago we really wanted to visit. Meteor Gem.
Meteor Gem,
yeah.
They've been bringing our stuff like really hardcore.
Okay.
And so
we met those
I've
dudes,
seen
a couple, at least
there.
one of them in Chicago at the show, and they're sweethearts. Yeah.
Where's Everlasting Spew at? Where are they out of? Europe?
Italy,
yeah.
Oh, Italy. Okay. That's what I thought. Yeah, I want to pick up a copy of that. I definitely got to get Paranesium, so I want to hunt those down. And anybody that's viewing this today, check out. There's links for everything in the description below. I think I got everything. Lewis, did you check that out? You have to look and let me know if there's anything missing. I can throw stuff in. What's so we know that you're coming back over in May, right? You're doing MDF. You're doing some dates to be announced at some point soon, about up and down probably the East Coast, I would imagine.
It'll be pretty soon. They're just like locking in the final things.
What else is in the works? You guys tracking anything on the next album, or what's happening now as a full unit? And I forgot to ask, Dan, he's local too, or to you guys?
Local enough. Like we can get to his place if we leave in the afternoon. Like,
oh wait, he lives 6 hours.
6
away.
hours.
Yeah. We can get to him. Like
that's not exactly local, exactly.
for us, it's local. For Australia, it's local for sure. Like
I just drove to Cleveland and it's 6 hours. This is a long fucking drive.
Yeah. So for the previous incarnation of Alters to rehearse, Lewis would have to drive between Victoria and South Australia for like 10 hours, basically.
Okay.
And come and stay with his parents for a weekend, and then we'd go into the room and practice, and then he'd go home. Now it's not so. It's less time than that, but that's the price you pay for being in Australia generally.
Yeah.
If you have people who don't live next door to you,
right,
it can be quite challenging. But sometimes, like with this band, you don't really have the option. You want the right people for the band, not necessarily the convenient ones.
Couple comments here real quick. My friend Devin says he's got a friend in Townsville. Is that
that's the top end, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, that's like 30 hours north.
And I forget where Simon's at. Simon, if you're still in
Sydney.
here, Sydney. I think he's in Sydney. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which that's where compared to Melbourne, that's up or down?
It's up and east a bit.
Up and east. Okay. Couple hour drive for that one, I assume too.
Yeah, 9 or 10 ish. We drove
wow.
it to play that show. So.
Man, that is you guys, man. That's hardcore, man. I mean, it's for people out there that think, why doesn't this death metal come to, and I'm just talking about like a US band. Why don't they come to my town? You guys are halfway around the world.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like you said, Lewis, you nailed it perfectly. When you get an opportunity, you either have to be fully committed to it or just don't bail, because you're not going to have labels or other bands constantly at your door unless they suddenly are like, oh, this band we got to have them over here. And even then, still, the logistics and the expense of it is fucking crazy.
Well, yeah, you have to want to do it for other reasons.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we obviously enjoy doing this. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it.
Right.
And, it's certainly not about the money. We're making art, and we're making art because we want to make art, and this is the art, and this is, it's more about, wanting to present that art and whatnot. But obviously it's very expensive. So, if you can cover your costs, if you can make a little bit of money that you can then put into the next tour or the next record, that obviously is like life-changing. So, that's just kind of how it is. As far as, the future, you sort of briefly mentioned, I guess, right now, we're going to be doing this in May, but I'm going to be sort of bunkering down. I've just moved house, but basically bunkering down here in the half set up studio. And I'm going to be working on new material, and then hopefully we can, get together, the three of us, and work on new material as well. So I'm looking forward to take some time away from playing shows. I think we played about 50 shows in the last 6 months.
That's pretty good, man. That's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty hectic. Like for a band from Australia, that's a lot. So because
let me ask you this real quick: when you're demoing material or you're actually tracking and writing songs, what setup are you using, both of you guys, and go one at a time? I guess let's start with you. What are you using? GarageBand, Logic, Cubase? What are you doing?
I like working in Logic as far as my DAW goes, and then I've got some cabs here. I've got some amps here. I've got after seeing Brendan used it when Brendan had it, and then when we were tracking a CD Reflection, we kind of used it when we were doing scratch guitars with the drums. But I've got one of those Fryette power stations that I'm in the process of plumbing into my desk here.
The Fryette, just real quick, if I can interrupt, the Fryette is kind of like an aux box or something like that, so you're not cranking your 100-watt head.
Yeah, it's like an attenuator.
Attenuator, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
Yeah, it's technically it's a load box, so it's a reactive load.
Reactive load, right?
It has a 50-watt or 100-watt, depending on which one you choose.
Right.
Power amp in it as well, so you can use it as an amp, for pedals, if you want. But
so that actually answers a question I was going to ask you. Are you, Lewis in particular, first? Are you pretty much using the load box and miking cabs and completely eschewing the use of like modelers?
Yeah.
So I
use my own stuff with my own pedals. I basically got this set up so I can do it that way. I've previously definitely, just for early demoing purposes, sometimes you just want to sit in front of and quickly track an idea down. Sometimes it's easier to just plug in and use an amp model. I've previously messed around with some of the neural DSP ones.
Right.
They're pretty good. But yeah, I don't really like using them, and I'd rather use my own pedals, and I've kind of got that set up. So sort of in the process, I'm just kind of finishing setting this up at the moment so that basically I can do it completely from my pedal board, and I don't need to need to use anything.
I just started digging into this fucking thing. It's I swear I need to be I feel like I need to be an astrophysicist to understand what the hell is going on with this thing. So
They are sick. They are sick.
yeah, and then I plug this thing into my amp, and I'm like, hey man,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
the way.
it's the HM2 thing. It's like awesome. So you know, they have their uses, you know, that kind of stuff. But I'm not in a space where I can really have like a a dual recto here or something like that. You know what I mean? It just isn't going to work for me. What about you, Brendan? What do you do when you're tracking at home?
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. Because Lewis and I both are guitar players technically. Like I play the bass in alters, but I play it like a guitar player.
Yeah,
I can't deny that. We have a similar kind of setup. Like the whole point of the power station for both Lewis and for me is that I have a 200-watt KT88 head here, and I want to use it because it sounds good. So like this is from a little company in Australia called MI Amplification. Michael is a wizard, but his amps and pedals are very hard to get. It's basically the head version of this pedal. The little
so Delta. He's a boutique manufacturer.
Yeah. He's a wizard, but he doesn't build very much stuff. And anyway, it's so I could never get a modeling version of this head because it's not a record or a JCM or whatever.
Right.
And the amp I used before this was a Sun Solaris, which is I have another problem. It's like how it's basically a Fender, but nothing sounds like it. So when we're tracking instruments properly, like that's what we use a similar rig where we're like running our real shit into a load box to try and keep things. And I'm using like cabinet impulses of my own cabs that I captured.
Yeah,
so
you've done
close to what we're doing as possible.
Yeah, so you are doing impulse response then of the stuff then, yeah.
Yeah. I've got 2 cabs over here that I did captures of so that I could just do it. I could sound like it would be if I turned everything on, but it would be silent.
But you don't have to have it all on. Right.
Exactly. In terms of writing the material, we did a lot of Guitar Pro stuff, and we probably will do that again because it's really convenient. It doesn't.
It is. I'm just digging into it now, but you gotta remember, guys, you're young dudes, comparatively speaking. So when I get into this stuff, I'm like, oh, it's kind of. Kevin uses it for my guitar lessons. I'm like, man, he wants me to start using it. I'm like, dude, I'm like scared of that shit. I don't know what I'm doing. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've recently just come back to it because I jumped on it like Guitar Pro 4 when I was in high school, like 2004 or whatever, like learning to use it then and wrote stuff in it. And most of the material that Lewis and I have written since then has just been us like opening a session in a DAW and just like playing straight into the session. But the thing that Guitar Pro gives you, or like transcription software, whatever you decide to use, if you're using like Dorico or something pro like that, if you can read sheet. If you want to test out a harmony, like if you've got 2 guitars and you want to test out moving one voice in a chord, you can just open Guitar Pro and go, yeah, move that to fret 15, and then play it back and go, nah, that sucks. You don't have to like replay the whole part and to test it. And so for Acetic Reflection, there's one track on it that didn't exist until we started jamming all the rest of it because we needed one more to finish the record. So I went away and wrote it mostly in Guitar Pro and then sent it back and forth between Lewis and I, and we built a song out and over the course of like 24, 48 hours. Wow. Showed it to Alan by playing him the MIDI. Like we went out to Lewis's car and put a USB stick in and played him a rendered MIDI file of the Guitar Pro.
Wow.
And said, this is what the song sounds like. And he was like, yeah, okay, cool. And then we went into the thing and then we played the song and like worked it out. That song is Anhedonia. It's the first track.
Oh yeah, on
the second side.
Yeah.
So that's
second track on the second side.
Second track on the second side? Yeah, you're right. It's after Acetic Reflection, right?
You know what's crazy though here, guys, is, and you're old enough to know this, in that just think like what it was like to track records back in the 70s and even the early 80s, pre-digital, where you couldn't do any of that kind of stuff.
I don't have to think. Yeah, I don't have to think.
I do prefer tracking in that sort of a way, and that's when we go to actually record. That's closer to how we do it, but for like demoing purposes, these days, like it's really nice. Like you can say, all right, you've done all the recording of the ideas into your DAW anyway, but then you could like tab out all the riffs, put in like a quick shitty drum beat to it, export that as a MIDI file, and then record it over a click, so you can actually send it to a drummer and it will make sense. And
so that begs the question then: how on the previous album here and the last album, how were the drums tracked in the studio, or were they tracked at somebody's
Yeah, we tracked them live in the studio.
Okay.
No click, no nothing like that. It was all done basically live with scratch guitars and bass.
We were playing along with it.
And then we tracked the guitars, the bass, the vocals, etc.
But did you already have basic, drum tracks in there for Alan to have a basic idea of what you were after, or you not at all?
We did a pre-production. Like Alan and I went into the studio ourselves a couple of weeks before the album, a couple of months. I can't remember how long before the album it was. But I mic'd his kit in a rehearsal room and we played a rhythm track, and so we pre-produced everything.
Oh, right.
So that he could get a feeling of, and then we tracked all the guitars on it just so you could hear just normal pre-production stuff. And then when we went into the studio, we replicated a similar setup where Lewis and I played along with Alan from the control room so that he could hear us, and we were basically playing like an instrumental version of the song.
Oh, wow.
Only Alan was being recorded properly.
Yeah.
And then after that, we deleted the bass guitars and the rhythm guitars, and then from Alan's recorded drums, we built the album up from that. So
incredible.
We did it that way. I mean, we stopped short of we ran out of time, but we were in a proper analog studio.
Okay.
A Neotech console, which is an API and Neve sort of middle ground thing.
Right.
And a 1/4-inch tape machine. So we were going to mix it and produce it all in the studio and then render it through the tape machine and master it on the tape machine and do the whole thing. But we just ran out of time.
Hold on. Let me. So you did it all digitally, and then you were going to go to analog to master?
Yeah, it was analog console, analog preamps, analog rack gear through A to D converters to get it into Pro Tools, and then at the end mixing it all.
Right.
We were going to print it out through the 1/4-inch tape and back into digital.
Oh shit!
And do it that way.
What studio was that?
Running out of time.
Basically, we're just using Pro Tools as a glorified tape machine.
Yeah.
Because cutting tape sucks. I've done it. I don't want to.
Oh yeah.
No way. So
we'll wrap here in a sec. I just wanted to ask. I know it's an alters thing, but Brendan, you doing anything with Convulsing, or is that kind of a hiatus thing until whenever, whatever?
No, I'm. Hopefully, I don't want to have it on record forever in case I fuck it up. But I've got an album more or less in the can, and I'm trying to release it by the end of the month. And I was working on it throughout the pre-production in the lead up to doing the Alters tour. When we booked the first tour, I was like, oh shit, because I joined Alters right at the time I was supposed to be doing another record, but we instead made Ascetic Reflection.
Okay.
And then we've been gigging and touring for Alters ever since. So I was like, oh fuck, I'm really behind the time right now. So I just sort of crammed it in there between April and August. And then in between the Europe tour and the US tour, I tracked all the bass and continued to mix it. And so now I'm trying to finish it up before we go away to the US again and get it out the door.
Nice.
But it's definitely, in terms of where that sits, it's a parallel line to Alters. It's kind of neither is subordinate to the other one.
Okay.
I don't focus on one more than the other.
It's similar vein to the first album, or
I don't know. You'll have to tell me later.
Okay.
It's different. It's different to Alters, but the second track on the first Convulsing record is called Altered for a reason. It's named after Alters, more or less. So it's all one big
continuous circle.
This is the Alter symbology of the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail. Is the kind of thing that we do.
Well, it was funny because at the show in November, I'm looking you guys up because I'm like, I honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I had not heard of you before. Okay. I'm looking you up and I'm looking on Metallum and I see you and I'm like, and then I see Convulsing. I'm like, whoa. And it kind of a little light bulb went off because I remember listening to that back and I have no idea how I fell in that rabbit hole, how I got to it. Could have been through Ulcerate. Who knows? I think it was a Bandcamp type thing. And I was like, man, I mean, that is a fucking harrowing album. I don't know how else to put it. It's very intense, very intense. Both you guys, both your bands are intense.
I mean, that's the weird position about me in this band is that I wouldn't have done that without this band. It's the Jason joining Voivod thing where like Voivod was Jason's favorite band, like, you know what I mean, and he joined it out of Metallica, like to go fucking play with Voivod. It's that kind of relationship that I have with the Alters material. So I wouldn't have done that record or any of that shit without Alters, and I also wouldn't be in Alters without having done that shit. So it's
exactly.
It's all part of one package.
So yeah, like you said, it is the Ouroboros. It's just, you know, it's really that kind of circle there.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think I guess that's it. So hit these guys up on Bandcamp. And I think Lewis, I don't think I put your private Instagrams up. So if you want me to, I can, but if you don't, that's cool. The band's Instagram is there. I know I have Bandcamp. I don't know if you guys don't have like a proper website though, do you? Like band website?
We mostly just use Bandcamp for stuff, and then like Facebook, Instagram, that sort of thing.
I have your Facebook, yeah.
Been meaning to set one up for a long time, and every time I go to do it, I'm just like,
no problem. No problem there. Do you have anything you want to pimp real quick before I throw my little caveats out there about what I've got coming up? A couple cool guests you guys probably know or will like that I'll mention here in a minute. But Brendan, anything you want to?
Please buy these.
Yeah.
It'll be very helpful. Yeah. Just go to the label. I think they shipped a bunch of stuff to the UK recently to Plastic Head. They'll be in the US.
Well, that's why I'll check Meteor Gem, and if they have it, I'll put their link in there. And you said Plastic Head. I'll check that. I'll put that link in.
They're about to get some stuff from Everlasting Spew.
I'll put Everlasting's.
Yeah.
I'll put those labels in. If you guys give me a list of stuff, I'll put them in then.
If you're buying from us, if you're buying from us direct, it's normally, it works out like the same. If you're getting like 2 records, it'll cost the same as shipping 1 record generally. So like if you and a friend both want one, or you want a t-shirt or something and a record, you just combine them in like one shipment. It's very expensive to ship anywhere from Australia. It's just one of these things. But
do you by chance have the t-shirt handy, like laying around anywhere? No.
Yeah, which one?
I've got a couple. Depends which one you want.
Hang on, I'm talking about, you know, the one, Lewis. He knows the one. The really crazy. Fuck, I'm looking on here to see if I can see it on your Bandcamp. I got to show this because it is just absolutely fucking insanely cool.
Is it Hazem's tattoo design?
Yeah.
I
don't see it.
So we met this dude in Europe on at Killtown, and then he came to a couple of shows after that.
There it is. Hang on, Brendan. Let me pull this up. Go ahead and tell the story.
Yeah, so we met this dude Hazem. His art, it's G.O.R.A.A.L on Instagram, and he's a tattoo artist. He's a lovely guy. We met him at Killtown, and then he came to a show. I think it was at Kiel or something. It was like Kiel or Wolfsburg in Germany.
It was
Wolfsburg. And we hung out a bit more. And yeah, he's great. Hazem Al-Mallah is his name, and he's an amazing artist. And he offered that design to us to put on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
So we're like, fucking hell yeah, dude. And we printed it up for the US tour in conjunction.
You're out of them in my size, of course.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, it's hard for us to do stuff like that because we basically, for that tour, we had to print half in the East Coast and half in the West Coast, and then try and like sell everything before we got to flying to Mexico because we couldn't take it. And so it was this whole like
the customs thing going. Yeah. You don't want to be caught with that. Plus, you don't want to be caught with like a shitload of stuff that you got to fly home. That's going to cost a lot.
Yeah, we tried.
I will. I definitely want one of those, so I'm gonna have to figure out a way to work it out. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't feel like paying crazy fucking Aussie shipping, but I'll figure something out. And I definitely want to get some of the vinyls. So check these guys out and support them, man. I mean, these, even over U.S. death metal bands or U.S. extreme metal bands, these guys face a much tougher road uphill than because if you're in the U.S. or Europe, there's a lot of markets for you to play. There's a lot of options to exercise. These guys don't have those as readily or as available, I guess would be the best way to put it. So if anybody wants to catch them, try to get a ticket for MDF. And as they said, soon announcements for some tour dates. Upcoming tomorrow morning for me. 1 o'clock p.m., I've got Rob Lamoth coming in. Rob's the original singer of the River Dogs with Vivian Campbell. It's not heavy metal. It's fucking great hard rock, classic hard rock. Dude is one of the best singers you're ever going to hear. I'm saying that. So he's in at 1 o'clock. Tomorrow night at 10 o'clock, I've got OG Press Dennis from Analog Archives. We're bringing our Forgotten Metal Gems from the 80s and 90s series back. We're talking about Devastation, talking about Nasty Savage. We're talking about Fields of Nephilim. And yeah, we got one hair metal band in there. I got Blue Murder because it's John Sykes. You don't like it, don't watch it, but watch it. And then some real big names to announce. I got Ben Jackson from the original Crimson Glory coming in next Thursday, man.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
They're back. They are back. We're going to talk about where they were, where they've been, and what they're doing now. There is a track up if you look up Crimson Glory. One of the greatest power. What's that?
I'm going to do that straight after this. I despite the like Leviathan flag behind me. Which direction am I? Yeah, that way. What? I'm a huge power metal prog cheese boy.
Dude, fucking Transcendence. Yeah. Oh my God, what an album. Like nobody's made an album quite like that, in my opinion. Well, actually, you probably can't see it really well because I've got.
No, I saw the flag earlier.
You see it in the back. That's Crimson. That's Transcendence back there. So
yeah, man.
Yeah, I got. You can tell I'm not married, man. I've got Death Leprosy on one side. I've got above my bed. I've got Fate's Warning, Awaken the Guardian. Across here, I've got Rainbow Rising. No woman in her right mind's ever coming in my bedroom ever. You know, I mean, I
thought that as well, but you know, here I am.
I wouldn't either if I was her either. So I've been there, done that. You know.
Yeah.
Couple more quickies. Isaac Falk from Blood Incantation is coming in.
We love Isaac.
Tuesday the 13th. I'll tell him you said hi. Tuesday the 13th. So we'll be talking about BI. We'll be talking about Wayfarer. We'll be talking about Stormkeep. They're going out with Enslaved in March.
Oh my God.
Enslaved. Yeah.
That's a bill. Hell yeah.
European. I think it's just UK though.
Oh,
who else do I have coming in? Fuck. Give me 1 second and I'll get you guys out of here. I have to pimp my stuff, but I'm old and I forget things. So all right.
No, this is good. I get to react to it.
Oh, I got Brian Tadler. You a new wave of British heavy metal fan at all, guys?
Yeah, man, of course.
I got Brian Tadler from Diamond Head and Saxon coming at 11 o'clock on Tuesday the 6th. And 2 or 3 big names in the works, like big names. Oh, and I'm just saying it. Stephen Wilson is coming.
Oh, yeah.
He is coming second or third week of February. As many people know, I did some stuff for that band quite a ways back, Porcupine Tree. So we're gonna primarily be talking about his other project, though, No Man with Tim Boness. It's kind of the talky sort of really. They just put out a box set, so we're gonna focus on that, and then maybe he'll come back and do something on the solo stuff. So big names, big times, lots brewing here. I want to thank Brendan Sloan and Lewis Fisher from Altars, guys. I really appreciate you coming on. Cool to hang out, and I hope we sell some records for you.
Yeah.
Hang on a sec, guys. I'm gonna end the stream now. Thanks for everybody that tuned in. Simon,
do me a favor. Do me a favor and ask Steve about Bass Communion. Ask him whether he's gonna do like a compilation of old Bass Communion stuff that's now out of print.
Okay,
so you fan of that shit.
You opened up a door there. I'm gonna give you a little something here.
Okay.
If you hunt real long and hard, and I don't think you have to hunt very hard. If you go, I believe you go to Steve's original website, which probably is linked to his new website.
Right.
Look up Bass Communion. I am the very first guy that ever interviewed Steve about Bass Communion back in 2001 or 2. I forget which one it was. So Steve and I go way back to like 99. I've actually had Richard Barbieri on already for 2.5 hours. I've had Colin Edwin on for 3 hours. So all those guys, I don't really know Gavin. I know him, but I don't know him well like I know the other guys. But Steve has been, he's a big rock star. So it's kind of hard to get guys like that to come on your smaller show. But we're friends, and he's going to do it for me. So that's going to be killer. I will ask him what's going on with Bass Communion and see what's shaking there. But if no joke, Brendan, I'll find it if you do me a favor when we get off, just give me your email address. I'll email you a link to that original thing. This was when he came out with Ghosts on Magnetic Tape.
Yeah.
So we're going, which is a killer dark ambient. You know.
I know. I don't want to like get to inflate the time of the episode by another 30 minutes.
No, we'll stop there. I don't want Lewis wants to go eat.
But yeah, if you want to talk to me about Porcupine Tree, my inbox is always open.
Well, we'll do that.
On my records for that reason. Like
we'll do that. I got stuff here that would blow your mind from collecting from years of being on the tours and doing all kind of stuff. Hell, I even helped them load out gear in Baltimore and Philadelphia, and shoving fucking racks with amps and heads and good stuff. So all right, hang on guys, one sec. Everybody that joined in, thank you so much. We will see you tomorrow for Rob Lamont. Be there, man. This guy fucking is amazing. You got to be there. All right.